It's only me, Claire Baker, former Clutterholic, founder of clutterclearing.net, bringing you a new series of videos with very practical and relevant information, resources and exercises to help you clear your clutter. I've even got a new haircut especially for this new series. Now, last month I shared with you a series of videos in which I helped you at a very practical level get ready and get started and guiding you through your first clutter clearing session, and I hope that they were really useful for you. Now, you may have struggled to do your first clutter clearing session. Please don't worry if you didn't manage to do your first clutter clearing session. You are not alone. As you've probably discovered, if clearing our clutter was simply about doing the doing and doing our clutter clearing sessions, then we'd all have cleared our clutter by now, because I've given you all of the information and the knowledge that you need to know in order to do your first clutter clearing session. You'd be doing many more clutter clearing sessions by this stage, like the one in the video that I shared with you last month in the clutter community, and you'd be making decisions quickly and easily, letting go of lots of things. They'd be coming off the conveyor belt and you go, hey, I've got this, I just need to carry on doing this, and you'd be creating the home of your dreams. But it's not quite happening like that, is it? No, we live in the real world. If knowing how to do it was enough to succeed, we would be succeeding right now. Okay, so what this tells us is that clearing our clutter isn't that simple. Okay, it's not just about the physical clutter. It's not just about deciding what you do and don't need to keep. Okay, we've probably got a bit of mental clutter there as well that we need to understand and deal with before we can succeed with the physical clutter in our homes. Remember, during the Making Decisions video, I shared with you the conscious and subconscious mind and how that works and why it's important that we allow ourselves to be not sure, because our subconscious mind may have a different idea to our conscious mind. That may be going on with our clutter as well. Lots of the press, whenever they speak to me, will always say, oh, is it mental or physical clutter that you deal with, Claire? And I say both. You do not get one without the other. I'm not suggesting that people with clutter have got mental health problems, but we do, to a certain degree, have a greater or lesser amount of mental clutter that goes alongside our physical clutter. Okay, so over the next few videos, I'm going to start explaining some of the things that you need to understand if you've found any of the following. So if you have found that you've managed to clear some clutter and then given up, or maybe you've managed to clear some clutter and then the panic and the anxiety starts to kick in. Maybe you felt like you can't really see and feel enough of a difference when you've spent hours working on your clutter. Okay, or maybe you felt like you can't see and feel enough of a difference. This isn't happening quickly enough. So again, we reach that point where we give up because it feels hopeless. Or maybe you've struggled to let go of things because you're thinking, but it might come in useful, or I'm going to use this in the future when I've cleared my clutter. Okay, any of these sound familiar? Or maybe there's just simply that fear of letting go of some of the things in our clutter. Okay, so these next few series of videos will help explain what's perhaps going on at that subconscious level in our minds, that thing that seems to control us so much and yet is very hard to get control over. Now, the first thing that I want to explain is what I call the negative clutter cycle, and this is what we can so easily get ourselves into. I know I did when I had my clutter. Okay, so again, do let me know in the comment box below if any of this looks familiar. All right, okay, so I've got 10 boxes in a circle on the board, and this, like I say, is called the negative clutter cycle. So apologies for my handwriting, negative clutter cycle. And you may well recognise yourself in what I'm about to describe that goes on here. Now we're going to start at the top here, the orange box at the top in the middle, okay? So this is box number 1. And at box number 1, what happens here? The clutter grows. Clutter grows. We all have that. That's how the clutter gets to be a little bit out of control. Remember my first video about the clutter conveyor belt concept? There's more coming on than is coming off. The clutter then grows. Okay, after that, the clutter grows. We don't necessarily notice it, but then at step 2, we start to notice that there's a lack of space or less space. Less space. Okay, so we notice it. Next, the third step of the negative clutter cycle is that we actually want to clear it. Want to clear the clutter. Okay. Important that we acknowledge that this is not a step that everybody necessarily reaches. When I work with hoarders, they don't necessarily want to clear the clutter. Remember, clearing the clutter involves it coming off the conveyor belt. It requires us to let go of some of the clutter. And although there are many people who say to me, Claire, I need your help to clear the clutter, actually the letting go, with my help obviously and guidance and support and the time that we need, that resistance to actually letting go of some of the things in our clutter, not all of it, some of it, is actually a resistance to clearing the clutter. So let's not confuse clearing the clutter with actually, I just want to reorganize it or move it. Okay, so very often my hoarders don't reach this point. And for friends and relatives of people who have clutter, I always say to them, unless your friend or your relative or your neighbour has reached this point where they want to clear the clutter, we are never going to succeed. I quite often get councils, local authorities who say, Claire, we need you to come and work with this hoarder. They've been given notice, an eviction notice. They've got to move out in 2 or 3 months. Can you come and work with them? And I will say, have they reached this point? Do they want to clear the clutter? And if the answer is no, I cannot help them. And equally, even if they do want to clear their clutter, if the hoarder has reached that point of acknowledging there's a problem and that they don't want to continue living that way, I have to then negotiate with the local authority or the organisation, say, look, you need to give them a year. As long as they are making progress, let's set a target, say in 3 months' time, let's agree that they have cleared 1 room in 3 months' time. That is hard to negotiate because, again, the pressure is really on. But with a hoarder, it will just create more panic if they are put under pressure to have to clear the whole of their home in a matter of months. So, again, this is actually a really, really important stage. Whether we are a general clutterholic, we have regular clutter, or whether we are a hoarder. Okay, so what happens once we've decided that we want to clear the clutter? Well, we then start to do some clutter clearing, and in the negative clutter cycle, the 4th stage is actually we decide we want to keep most of it. Okay, so we keep most of it. We justify it by saying, but this might come in useful. This cost a lot of money. I'm going to use it once I've decluttered. This is my hobby, even though we're not actually using it or we're not using it all. This is part of a set, even though we don't use even half of the set, we decide, oh, I must keep it because it's part of a bigger set. Or we keep most of it because we don't want to waste it, okay? So, after we've decided to keep most of it, when we've gone through the clutter, the fifth stage of the negative clutter cycle is that actually no clutter is cleared. No clutter is cleared. Going back to our clutter conveyor belt concept, nothing actually comes off that conveyor belt, okay? So because we haven't decided to let go of it, and we've kept most of it. So after we realise, or we may realise but don't want to acknowledge, that no clutter has actually been cleared because we've decided to keep most of it, what happens then? Well, actually the clutter is just moved or reorganised. Clutter is moved or reorganised. Okay. You may have seen that there are people out there who are professional declutterers and organisers. What they do is they help people reorganise their clutter, and maybe a little bit comes off the conveyor belt. But actually, in the negative clutter cycle, because we've decided to keep most of it, so no clutter is actually cleared. So the person usually focuses on moving it, reorganising it, making sure that it looks and feels a little different. Okay. What happens after that? Not very good at writing this side. So the seventh step is that we've reorganised and moved the clutter, but because we haven't actually reduced the volume of things that are in our home or on the conveyor belt, the things are still not used. So clutter not used because there's no space. So for example, let's say somebody had got lots of craft items. Lots of my clients and members are crafters. So have a lot of craft items that they plan to make things with. However, let's imagine that they've worked on, let's say, their dining room. They want to clear their dining room table so that they have a table that they can do some crafting on. However, because they keep almost all of their clutter, the volume that is in that room hasn't actually changed. So nothing is actually cleared, and they actually reorganise or move some of the clutter. Now that may mean piling piles on top of piles. It may be moving things from corner to corner, maybe even room to room. But the amount of space that they actually create in that dining room, because they are by just moving and reorganising, is not enough to clear the entire dining room table to create the space for them to do their crafting. Okay, so the craft items that are in the clutter that they are keeping because they want to use these once they've cleared the clutter, there's still not enough space to spread out on the dining room table and do the crafting. So those items of crafting are still clutter because they are not being used. Okay, like I said, this is a perfectly normal cycle for us to be in. We tell ourselves, I'll use it once I've cleared the clutter. We don't actually clear any clutter because we keep most of it, and therefore we still aren't able to use the things once we've done what we think is some clutter clearing. Okay, so the clutter isn't used because there's no more space, because nothing came off the conveyor belt. Then what happens? Well, the things stay as clutter. things stay as clutter. And they're clutter because they're not being used. They're not being used because there's no space, because the things, the clutter was just moved or reorganized. And the reason why the clutter was just moved and reorganized was because nothing actually came off the conveyor belt, and nothing came off the conveyor belt because we actually decided to keep most of it. We didn't necessarily make realistic decisions. Okay, what happens after that? So the things stay as clutter. They stay as reorganized clutter because we reorganized and moved it here. So the 9th step in the negative clutter cycle is that we don't see or feel a difference. Don't see or feel a difference. Don't see or feel a difference. We might temporarily see and feel a difference because we reorganized it, we moved it. So whereas before we might be used to opening the door to the room and seeing that box there, that box might not be there anymore. It might have moved to another corner or not another area of the room. So we might see and feel a difference for a little while. But again, that subconscious mind knows that we kept most of the things in there. Nothing actually got cleared. Nothing came off the conveyor belt. So actually we know that we're not actually making much of a difference. So as a result of not seeing or feeling a difference, what happens? The 10th step, we give up. We give up. Or we feel demotivated. Demotivated. I know a lot of people who will say, well, I'm constantly decluttering. I'm constantly going through the things in my clutter. So they haven't necessarily completely given up in terms of I'm not even going to bother spending any time doing this. But they are very definitely demotivated because they're looking at things again. Do I keep it? Do I not keep it? Obviously that method we know doesn't work. We need to give ourselves 7 choices about what to do. But nonetheless, it demotivates us. We give up. And guess what happens? When we give up, feel demotivated, we might go out and buy ourselves something to cheer us up, make us feel better. And so the clutter starts to grow again. Not that it's ever really stopped growing, because even while we've been through this negative clutter cycle, the clutter has continued to grow because of that accumulation end of the conveyor belt. So just to summarise again and make ourselves feel really bad, don't worry, there is a positive cycle. I will share that with you later. But the negative clutter cycle has 10 steps. The first one is where the clutter grows. The second one is as a result of the clutter growing, we get less space. The third step, as a result of less space and the clutter growing, we decide we want to clear the clutter. We then try to do some decluttering, but we find that we actually keep most of it, okay, because we're probably using the keep, chuck, charity method. Because we keep most of it, no clutter is actually cleared. Nothing actually comes off the conveyor belt. Because no clutter is cleared, what we actually end up doing is just moving or reorganizing the clutter. Because we're just reorganizing or moving the clutter is still not used because we don't have space to actually use it, because we haven't created any space because nothing came off the conveyor belt. As a result of the clutter not being used and not having any space to use it, those things actually stay as clutter. As a result of the things staying as clutter, we don't see or feel a difference. As a result of not seeing or feeling a difference, we give up and feel demotivated. And because we give up and feel demotivated and don't control that accumulation, the clutter continues to grow. Does this look familiar? Please let me know. Please let me know, and let others know that they are not alone. If you think about it, this whole cycle, the clutter grows, and where are we? Things stay as clutter. Between step 1 and step 8, we've used an awful lot of time and an awful lot of energy and achieved nothing, because we've still got clutter here, but we had clutter here. It's no wonder that we don't feel that we can see or feel a difference, and we give up and feel demotivated, because the time and the energy and the stress and the anxiety and the depression that all of these 8 steps require to have achieved nothing, because the things are still staying as clutter when we get to step 8. It's hardly surprising that clutter is such a blight, if you like, on our lives, that it does zap our energy, not just visibly, where it can exhaust us just looking at it, but it's hardly surprising that when we try to do some decluttering, that it's exhausting, and that is why. Okay, like I say, do share with me your experiences of these steps below. Let others know that they are not alone. This has obviously all come from the fact that I've been working with people who have clutter challenges since 2001. So this is built, if you like, on an awful lot of clients and members that I've had over the years. And they all say, yes, now I understand. Now, you might be thinking, yes, Claire, I understand. That's what happens with me. Oh my goodness, I feel even worse. Don't worry. I will be sharing the positive clutter clearing cycle with you in the next few days. So don't worry, this cycle can be broken, and I will show you how in a couple of days. All right. Thanks for watching. Keep sharing, and I shall see you very soon. Take care.